Why you should never commit a crime in ancient Mesopotamia. Welcome to your nightmare. You're awake now. Not the gentle awakening to your modern bed with its memory foam and climate control, but the harsh jolt back to consciousness on your reed. Mat in a mud brick hovel somewhere along the Euphrates River, circa 1780 BCE. Your name doesn't matter. What matters is that you're about to learn why ancient Mesopotamia was essentially a legal minefield wrapped in desert heat and divine wrath. You could be Enlilbani, a potter whose hands are already cracked from claywork before the sun rises. You might be Naram-Sin, a merchant whose donkey cart carries barley and bad decisions in equal measure. Or perhaps you're just another goat herder named Yonama, whose primary qualifications for existence are breathing and occasionally preventing livestock from wandering into temple grounds. But here's what you need to understand, before you even think about stepping outside your door. In this civilization that gave the world writing, the wheel, and legal codes, justice wasn't served. This was carved in stone and administered with the subtlety of a bronze axe to the skull. The year is sometime during the reign of Hammurabi, the legendary king whose name would echo through history not for his military conquests or architectural marvels, but for creating a legal system so comprehensively terrifying that it makes modern maximum security prisons look like meditation retreats. Picture this: 282 laws etched into black diorite, standing 8 feet tall in the center of Babylon like a monument to human suffering. This isn't a legal code, it's a catalogue of creative ways to destroy your life. You wake to the familiar weight of debt pressing down on your chest like a stone slab. In Mesopotamia, debt wasn't just financial inconvenience. It was a family tradition passed down through generations like a curse. Your father owed grain to the temple. Your grandfather owed silver to a merchant. You owe your soul to everyone. And the interest compounds daily like a plague spreading through your bloodline. But today feels different. Today, you're going to make a simple transaction. You need to borrow a donkey from your neighbor, Marduk. Yes, that's actually a real Babylonian name, because apparently ancient parents believed in preparing their children for a lifetime of introductions that sound like sneezing fits. It's a simple arrangement. Borrow donkey, transport goods to market, return donkey, pay small fee. What could possibly go wrong? Oh sweet, naive hypothetical you. In ancient Mesopotamia, everything could go wrong. Everything always went wrong. And when things went wrong, they went wrong with the spectacular efficiency of a ziggurat collapse. Let's paint the scene of your doom more vividly. You live in what archaeologists generously call a modest dwelling, which is ancient speak for walls and a prayer. Your home is made of sun-dried mud bricks that turn back into mud whenever it rains, which thankfully isn't often because the gods apparently spent their hydration budget on creating the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The walls are thick enough to keep out most wild animals, but thin enough that you can hear your neighbor's family arguments, business negotiations, and gastrointestinal distress with uncomfortable clarity. Your furniture consists of whatever you could craft, trade, or steal without technically violating any of Hammurabi's 282 laws, which, as you'll soon discover, is surprisingly little. A few reed mats, some ceramic vessels that have seen better millennia, and a grinding stone that doubles as both kitchen equipment and, in dire circumstances, a weapon for home defense. Your wealth is measured not in silver or gold, but in how many days you can go without selling your children into slavery to pay off your debts. Because yes, child selling was not only legal in ancient Mesopotamia, was practically a financial planning strategy. Hammurabi's code helpfully specifies the terms. If a debt is owed and the debtor sells his wife, son, or daughter, or binds them over to service, for 3 years they shall work in the house of their purchaser or master. In the 4th year they shall be given their freedom. 3 years of slavery to clear daddy's debt. What a bargain, what a civilization. Your daily routine begins before dawn, because in Mesopotamia, the early bird doesn't just get the worm, it gets to avoid some of the more creative legal punishments reserved for late risers who miss their appointed temple duties. You wake to the sound of temple bells echoing across the city, calling the faithful to their morning oblations and reminding everyone that the gods are watching, judging, and keeping meticulous records of your failures. The air outside is already thick with heat that seems to rise from the earth itself, as if the underworld is conducting a preview of coming attractions. Dust clings to everything: your skin, your clothes, your food, your dreams. The smell is an intoxicating blend of human sweat, animal waste, cooking fires, and that peculiar aroma of desperation that seems to permeate every ancient civilization. Like incense in a temple, you make your way through streets that are less planned urban development and more wherever people decided to build things after too much barley beer. The city is a maze of narrow alleys, dead ends, and architectural decisions made by people who clearly never anticipated the invention of urban planning. Buildings lean against each other like drunken friends, sharing walls and probably sharing a considerable number of structural violations that would make modern building inspectors weep. The social hierarchy is visible everywhere you look, carved into the very architecture of society. At the top, literally and figuratively, are the priests and kings, living in palaces and temple complexes that tower over the city like artificial mountains. These are the people who speak directly to the gods, who interpret the will of divine beings, and who coincidentally happen to live in luxury while everyone else subsists on barley, gruel, and broken dreams. Below them are the scribes, the ancient world's equivalent of lawyers, accountants, and civil servants, all rolled into one profession that everyone needs and nobody likes. Scribes are the ones who record contracts, witness agreements, and maintain the legal documents that will either save your life or destroy it completely. They're also the ones who can read and write, which, in a world where literacy is rarer than honest politicians, makes them essentially magicians with very expensive services. Then there are the merchants, artisans, and skilled craftspeople like you, who possess just enough competence to be useful, but not nearly enough wealth to be safe. You exist in that precarious middle ground where you're valuable enough to be exploited, but expendable enough to be sacrificed when economic times get tough. Which is always at the bottom of society are the slaves, who have the questionable advantage of knowing exactly where they stand in the social order. No false hopes, no dreams of advancement, no complicated debt structures, just pure, honest servitude until death or manumission, whichever comes first. But here's where things get interesting in that specifically Mesopotamian way that makes interesting synonymous with potentially fatal. The Code of Hammurabi doesn't just establish different punishments for different social classes, it creates an entire mathematical system of suffering where your pain is precisely calibrated to your social status. If a nobleman puts out the eye of another nobleman, his eye gets put out. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, the foundation of retributive justice that would influence legal systems for thousands of years. But if a nobleman puts out the eye of a commoner, he pays a fine. And if a nobleman puts out the eye of a slave, he pays the slave's owner the replacement cost of the slave. The slave gets nothing except a lifetime of one-eyed servitude and the knowledge that his suffering has been given a precise monetary value. Law 196 states it plainly. If a man put out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out. But Law 198 clarifies. If he put out the eye of a freedman, or break the bone of a freedman, he shall pay 1 gold mina. Justice isn't blind in ancient Mesopotamia. It's extremely nearsighted and heavily influenced by your bank account. This is the world you wake up to every single day. A world where your life's value can be calculated in silver shekels, where a single misstep can result in mutilation or death, and where the gods themselves have apparently endorsed a legal system that makes medieval torture chambers look like progressive rehabilitation centers. The sun is rising now, painting the mud brick buildings in shades of gold that make everything look almost beautiful, until you remember that beauty in ancient Mesopotamia is usually just suffering wearing cosmetics. You can smell bread baking in the communal ovens, mixing with the less appetizing odors of a city where sanitation is more theoretical than practical. And there's your neighbor, Marda Kabatahishu, standing beside his donkey like a man who's about to make the worst decision of your life. The donkey looks healthy enough for legs, 2 ears, 1 tail, and what appears to be a generally cooperative disposition. This should be simple. This should be safe. You approach him with the confidence of someone who hasn't yet read the fine print on Mesopotamian existence. Good morning, Marduk Abita Haeshu, you say, using his full name because in a society where names carry divine power, abbreviations are essentially blasphemy. I was wondering if I might borrow your donkey for the day. I need to transport some pottery to the market in the next village. He strokes his beard. Every respectable Mesopotamian man has a beard that doubles as a storage system for food, crumbs, and evidence of poor grooming habits, and considers your request. Of course, my friend, but the donkey must be returned before sunset in the same condition, and you'll owe me 2 measures of barley for the privilege. 2 measures of barley. That's reasonable. That's manageable. That's exactly the kind of thinking that has led to every legal disaster in the history of civilization. You shake on it, because in ancient Mesopotamia, a handshake isn't just a legally binding contract witnessed by the gods themselves. Marduk Kabatahishu even has his son fetch a scribe to record the agreement on a clay tablet, because apparently even borrowing livestock requires more paperwork than buying a house in modern times. The scribe, a thin man whose ink-stained fingers mark him as either very dedicated to his profession or very bad at washing, carefully inscribes the terms of your agreement in cuneiform characters that look like someone let chickens walk across wet clay. Let it be known, he intones with the solemnity of someone announcing divine judgment, that on this day, in the reign of Hammurabi, King of Kings, beloved of Marduk, this agreement is witnessed and recorded. The tablet specifies everything. The condition of the donkey, healthy, cooperative, recently fed. The duration of the lone sunrise to sunset. The compensation to measures of barley. And the consequences of failure to comply, unspecified but ominous. It's signed, sealed, and delivered to the cosmic filing system that apparently tracks every human transaction from birth to death. You lead the donkey away, feeling pleased with yourself. This is going well. You're handling your business like a responsible adult, following proper procedures, respecting legal frameworks. You're practically a model citizen of the greatest civilization in human history. The journey to the next village takes you through landscapes that showcase both the beauty and brutal indifference of the natural world. Date palms provide patches of shade that offer momentary relief from the sun, which seems to have taken the concept of daily solar radiation as a personal challenge to bake everything into submission. The Euphrates glitters in the distance like a ribbon of hope, reminding you that life is possible in this desert if you're clever enough to work with the rivers and lucky enough to avoid the countless ways civilization can kill you. Your pottery vessels crafted with the skill inherited from generations of potters' rattles, gently in the cart. Each piece represents hours of work, days of drying, and the kind of artistic vision that transforms clay into something beautiful and functional. These aren't just pots, they're your livelihood, your future, your children's inheritance. They're also extremely fragile, which in retrospect might have been an important consideration when deciding to transport them via donkey cart over ancient roads that were designed by people who apparently thought flat surface was just a suggestion. The market in the neighboring village is already bustling when you arrive. Merchants from various city-states have gathered to engage in the complex dance of ancient commerce, which involves equal parts negotiation, performance art, and ritualized. The air is thick with the smells of spices, cooked meat, human sweat, and that indefinable aroma of economic desperation that seems to hover over every marketplace since the invention of money. You set up your stall really, just a cloth spread on the ground with your pottery arranged in what you hope is an attractive display. The pieces catch the light beautifully, their glazed surfaces reflecting the sun like captured fragments of divinity. You're particularly proud of a large water jar decorated with images of fish and river reeds, a piece that represents the absolute pinnacle of your artistic achievement. Business is good, better than good, actually. A merchant from your purchases 3 of your smaller vessels. A priestess from a local temple admires your decorative bowls and buys 2 for ceremonial use. Even a minor nobleman expresses interest in your water jar, though he haggles with the enthusiasm of someone who believes paying full price is a form of moral weakness. By midday, you've sold nearly half your inventory and accumulated enough silver to pay Marduk Kabateshu, cover your debts, and maybe even splurge on some decent bread made with actual wheat instead of barley. You're feeling successful, accomplished, maybe even blessed by the gods. That's when you notice the sun, which has apparently decided to accelerate its journey across the sky, just to personally inconvenience you. The shadows are longer than they should be. The afternoon is advancing with alarming speed, and you still have pottery to sell, silver to count, and a donkey to return before sunset. But markets have their own rhythm, and that rhythm doesn't care about your contractual obligations. Customers browse at their own pace, haggle with the leisurely thoroughness of people who have nowhere else to be, and make purchasing decisions with all the urgency of geological processes. You can't rush commerce. You can't hurry ancient capitalism. As the afternoon stretches toward evening, you face the kind of decision that seems minor but carries the weight of destiny. Do you pack up your remaining pottery now and return the donkey on time, honoring your agreement but losing potential sales? Or do you stay and finish your business, accepting that you'll be a little late returning the donkey, but confident that Marduk Kabateshu will understand the demands of commerce? This, dear viewer, is where your education in Mesopotamian legal consequences truly begins. Because what you don't know, what nobody ever tells you when you wake up as a regular person in ancient Mesopotamia's, that lateness isn't just inconvenience. Tardiness isn't merely rudeness. In a society governed by the code of Hammurabi, Failing to return borrowed property on time isn't a social faux pas. It's theft, and theft, according to law, 8 of Hammurabi's code, carries some very specific penalties. If anyone steal cattle or sheep or an ass or a pig or a goat, if it belong to a god or to the court, the thief shall pay tenfold therefore. If they belonged to a freedman of the king, he shall pay tenfold. If the thief has nothing with which to pay, then he shall be put to death. The donkey doesn't belong to a god or to the court, which is fortunate. It belongs to your neighbor, a freedman, which means you'll only owe 10 times its value if you're caught stealing it. But here's the catch that makes Mesopotamian law particularly creative in its cruelty. If the thief has nothing with which to pay, then he shall be put to death. You look at your remaining pottery, you count your silver, you calculate the value of a healthy donkey versus your liquid assets, and realize with growing horror that you might be approaching what modern people would call insufficient funds. And ancient Mesopotamians called time to prepare for execution. The sun continues its relentless journey toward the horizon, and with each passing moment, your simple business transaction transforms into a legal crisis that could literally cost you your life. This is how it happens in ancient Mesopotamia. This is how everything happens. One moment, you're a successful merchant, making an honest living, and the next moment, you're a criminal facing the sharp end of Bronze Age justice. The donkey incident escalates. You decide to stay, because you're human, and humans have this remarkable capacity for convincing themselves that minor rule bending won't have catastrophic consequences. You tell yourself that Marduk Abitaheshu is reasonable. You tell yourself that a few extra minutes won't matter. You tell yourself that surely ancient Mesopotamian society has some concept of flexible scheduling. You are wrong about all of these things. The final customer of the day is a woman from the temple of Ishtar, who spends an eternity examining your water jar with the fish decorations. She holds it up to the light, traces the patterns with her finger, and asks detailed questions about your firing techniques, as if she's commissioning a royal sarcophagus, rather than buying a container for water storage. Every moment she deliberates is another moment the sun creeps closer to the horizon, another step toward your transformation from respectable merchant to accidental criminal. When she finally purchases the jar, the sun is painting the sky in those beautiful orange and purple hues that poets write about and condemned men see from prison cells. You pack your remaining pottery with hands that shake slightly, load everything onto the cart, and begin the journey home with the desperate urgency of someone who's just realized they're racing against divine judgment. The donkey, bless its simple donkey soul, seems to understand the gravity of the situation and trots along at a pace that would be admirable under normal circumstances, but feels agonizingly slow when you're trying to avoid becoming a legal precedent. The cart bounces over ruts in the road that weren't there this morning. Or maybe they were there, but you were too optimistic to notice them properly as you approach your village. You can see the first oil lamps being lit in windows, tiny dots of light that mark the transition from day to evening. The temple bells have started their sunset call to prayer, echoing across the settlement like a countdown to your doom. And there, standing in front of his house with his arms crossed and an expression that could curdle milk, is Marduk A-B-it-R. Heshu. Next to him stands a scribe. Not just any scribe, but the same scribe who recorded your original agreement, along with 2 other men you recognize as local elders. This is not the welcoming committee for a slightly late donkey return. This is the opening ceremony for a legal proceeding. Your late Marda Kabataheshu announces with the satisfaction of someone who's been practicing that phrase all afternoon. The sun has set. Our agreement specified that the donkey be returned before sunset. You climb down from the cart, your legs unsteady from more than just the long ride. Yes, I apologize for the delay. The market was busy, and I had customers. Interrupts one of the elders, a man whose beard is so long it could be classified as a separate entity, are not mentioned in the contract. The contract specifies sunset. The sun has set. The contract has been violated. The scribe unfurls a clay tablet. Contract hand begins reading in the ceremonial. Tone reserved for legal proceedings and funeral announcements. Let it be known that on this day, the borrower has failed to return the loaned animal at the appointed time, thereby constituting theft under the laws established by Hammurabi, King of Kings, beloved of Marduk. Theft, the word hangs in the evening, air like incense, except instead of blessing the proceedings, it's condemning you to a legal nightmare that makes modern bureaucracy look like a model of efficiency and compassion. Now wait, you protest, gesturing toward the donkey, which is standing right there looking perfectly healthy and unharmed. I'm returning the donkey now. It's in perfect condition. I'm not stealing anything. The law, explains the scribe with the patience of someone who's had this conversation many times before, does not recognize degrees of lateness. Property not returned at the agreed time becomes stolen property. Intent is irrelevant. The sun has set. The violation is absolute. This is your introduction to one of the fundamental principles of Mesopotamian jurisprudence. Context is for weaklings. The Code of Hammurabi doesn't care about traffic conditions, difficult customers, or reasonable delays. It cares about precise compliance with contractual terms, administered with the flexibility of granite and the mercy of a desert storm. Marduk-kab it-r. He shoe steps forward, and you notice he's wearing his best robe, the one usually reserved for religious festivals and formal occasions. This isn't a neighborly dispute. This is a legal event he's been planning. According to Law 8, he recites from memory, if anyone steal an ass, and it belongs to a freed man, the thief shall pay tenfold. The value of my donkey is 5 silver shekels. You owe me 50 silver shekels. 50 silver shekels. You count the silver from your day at the market and feel your stomach drop to somewhere around your sandals. You have 12 silver shekels. Even if you sold every remaining piece of pottery, you might reach 20 shekels. You are exactly 30 silver shekels short of avoiding the second part of Law 8, which states with brutal clarity, if the thief has nothing with which to pay, then he shall be put to death. Surely, you say, because hope is the last thing to die in the human heart, we can work out some arrangement. I can pay what I have now and work off the rest. I'm a skilled potter. I can make vessels for your household. The law, the bearded elder interrupts, does not provide for payment plans. The penalty is 50 silver shekels or death. There are no other options. You look around at the gathering crowd, because nothing draws a Mesopotamian audience like the prospect of watching someone's life fall apart in real time. Neighbors emerge from their houses, children peer around corners, and even a few slaves pause in their evening chores to witness the entertainment. This is better than a traveling storyteller, more engaging than temple festivals. This is live legal drama with actual consequences. The scribe produces another clay tablet and begins documenting the proceedings. Let it be recorded that the accused has acknowledged the late return of the borrowed animal and has been informed of the penalty as prescribed by law. The accused claims insufficient assets to pay the required compensation. I have an idea. You say, because desperation makes people creative in ways that are usually counterproductive. What if I return the donkey plus additional compensation? I have pottery worth at least 15 silver shekels, plus the 12 shekels in silver. That's 27 shekels. Surely that demonstrates good faith. Mardu Kabita Heishu strokes his beard thoughtfully, and for a moment you think reason might prevail. Then he smiles, and you realize that this smile is not the expression of a man considering compromise. This is the smile of someone who's about to explain why compromise is impossible. The law requires 50 silver shekels, he says. Not 48, not 50 shekels worth of mixed assets. 50 silver shekels. Anything less constitutes inability to pay, which triggers the death penalty provision. This is the moment when you truly understand the genius of Hammurabi's legal system. It's not designed to resolve disputes, it's designed to eliminate people who can't afford to resolve disputes. It's a self-cleaning legal mechanism that removes the financially inconvenient from society with the efficiency of a well-designed trap. The scribe continues his documentation. The accused has offered partial payment consisting of 12 silver shekels and pottery of claimed value. 15 silver shekels, totaling 27 silver shekels, which falls short of the required 50 silver shekels by 23 silver shekels, however, announces the elder with the magnificent beard. The law provides alternatives to immediate execution. The accused may choose to enter into debt slavery to work off the obligation, or may offer family members as collateral for the debt. Debt slavery, family collateral. These are your options for survival. Become the property of your creditor until you've worked off 50 silver shekels at whatever wages he deems appropriate, or sell your family members into temporary slavery to cover your debt. These are the reasonable alternatives to death in the greatest civilization in human history. How long would debt slavery last? You ask, because you need to understand the full scope of your disaster. The scribe consults his records and performs calculations that involve counting on his fingers and muttering under his breath. A skilled potter might earn 2 silver shekels per month in bonded service. 50 shekels would require 25 months of labor, assuming no interest charges, fees, or penalties for inadequate performance. 25 months. More than 2 years of slavery because you returned a donkey a few hours late. This is justice as imagined by people who believed that proportionality was a foreign concept from a less civilized society, and the family option. You ask, though you're not sure you want to know. The debtor may offer immediate family members for bonded service. Children typically serve 3 years to clear parental debts. As specified in Law 117, spouses serve until the debt is satisfied or until they die, whichever comes first. 3 years of slavery for your children, an indefinite term for your spouse, all because you stayed past sunset to sell pottery to a priestess who couldn't make up her mind about decorative patterns. Marda Kabataheishu gestures expansively, like a man demonstrating his own reasonableness. I'm prepared to be flexible about the terms. Your eldest son looks strong enough for farm work. 3 years of service from him would cover 45 shekels of the debt. You could work off the remaining 5 shekels in 6 months. Your eldest son, the boy who shows promise as a potter, who might carry on your family trade, who trusts you to protect him from exactly this kind of situation. He's standing in the doorway of your house right now, watching his father negotiate his freedom with A neighbor over a donkey that's standing right there, unharmed and available for immediate return. There has to be another way, you insist, because giving up is not in your nature. What if I petition the temple? What if I appeal to higher authorities? The bearded elder laughs, a sound like gravel in a grinding stone. Appeal to whom? The law is the law. Hammurabi himself established these penalties. Are you suggesting that the king's wisdom is flawed? Suggesting that the king's wisdom is flawed isn't just legal suicide, it's actual suicide with extra steps. Questioning royal authority falls under laws dealing with sedition, which carry penalties that make simple execution look like early retirement. The scribe looks up from his tablet. The accused must choose immediately. Debt, slavery, family collateral, or execution. The law does not permit extended deliberation. You look at your son, standing in the doorway with wide eyes that reflect the oil lamplight. You look at your spouse, whose face shows the kind of resignation that comes from living in a civilization where these conversations happen regularly. You look at your neighbors, watching your family's destruction with the fascination of people viewing a public entertainment. I choose debt slavery, you announce, because sacrificing yourself is preferable to sacrificing your family, and death solves nothing for anyone. Marduk-Kab, it-Ahishu nods approvingly. Wise choice. The contract will specify 25 months of bonded service, during which time you'll work my fields, tend my animals, and assist with any additional labor as required. Your family may remain in their home and will not be held responsible for your debts during your service. The scribe begins drafting the slavery contract with the same careful attention to detail he used for the donkey borrowing agreement. Every term is specified, every condition documented, every aspect of your surrender to bonded labor recorded in cuneiform that will outlast your civilization. Future archaeologists will dig up this tablet and study it as evidence of ancient legal practices, never knowing that it represents the destruction of your life over a punctuality issue. The bonded service begins at dawn, announces the elder. The debtor will report to his creditor's property with suitable clothing and tools for agricultural labor. Failure to report constitutes attempted escape, which carries additional penalties. Additional penalties, because apparently 25 months of slavery isn't sufficient punishment for being late with a donkey. The legal system needs backup punishments for people who don't embrace their enslavement with sufficient enthusiasm. As the crowd disperses and the scribe completes his paperwork, you stand in front of your house looking at the donkey that caused this entire catastrophe. It chews placidly on some grass, completely unaware that its temporary relocation has resulted in the systematic destruction of a human life. If donkeys could laugh, this one would be having the time of its life. Your family gathers around you for what might be your last evening together for more than 2 years. Your spouse tries to smile, your children ask questions you can't answer, and you all share a dinner of barley bread and bitter irony. Will you be able to visit? Asks your youngest daughter. I don't know, you admit, because the slavery contract doesn't specify visitation rights, and asking for clarification would probably result in additional fees. Will we have enough to eat? Asks your son. I don't know, you repeat, because your pottery business will effectively end when you begin bonded service, and supporting a family without income is challenging even in societies with social safety nets, which Mesopotamia decidedly lacks. When will you come home? Asks your spouse. 25 months, you say, assuming I survive the work, avoid additional penalties. And don't anger Mada Kabitaheshu enough to extend the contract. This is your last evening as a free person for the next 2 years. Tomorrow you become property. Your labor, your time, your physical well-being all belong to your neighbor, who has the legal right to work you as hard as he chooses, feed you as little as he can manage, and punish you for infractions that he gets to define. And the most maddening part of this entire situation is that it all stems from a perfectly reasonable business decision. You stayed late to serve customers. You prioritized your livelihood over arbitrary time restrictions. You made the kind of choice that, in any rational society, would be considered responsible entrepreneurship. But ancient Mesopotamia is not a rational society. It's a civilization that prioritizes legal compliance over human welfare, contractual precision over common sense, and social control over individual rights. It's a place where bureaucracy has been weaponized and deployed against anyone unfortunate enough to find themselves on the wrong side of inflexible regulations. As you lie on your reed mat for the last time as a free person, listening to your family's sleep and contemplating 25 months of agricultural labor, you can't help but wonder how a civilization advanced enough to create writing, law, and urban planning could simultaneously be backward enough to enslave people over scheduling conflicts. But that's ancient Mesopotamia for you, the cradle of civilization and the grave of human dignity, all wrapped up in one historically significant package. Dawn is coming, and with it, your new life as bonded property. Sweet dreams, if you can manage them, because tomorrow things get worse. When slavery meets divine intervention, dawn arrives with the punctuality that you failed to demonstrate the previous evening. The sun rises over ancient Mesopotamia like a cosmic bailiff, ready to collect on debts and enforce contracts with the impartiality of natural law. You wake not in your own home, but in the servant quarters of Mardu Kabetahishu's propertier, mud brick room that shares architectural DNA with your former house, but lacks any of the personal touches that made slavery seem like a distant possibility rather than your current reality. Your new accommodations consist of a straw mat, a water jar, and a grinding pessimism about the human condition that seems to permeate the very walls. The room is barely large enough for you to lie down without touching both walls simultaneously, which you suppose is appropriate since personal space is apparently a luxury reserved for people who return donkeys on time. Marduk-kab it-a. Hishu appears at your door before you fully process the transition from free potter to bonded agricultural laborer. He's carrying a wooden staff that might be a walking stick, a supervisory tool, or a weapon depending on your level of compliance with his instructions. The ambiguity is probably intentional. Ancient Mesopotamian management techniques relied heavily on implied threats and creative interpretation of authority. "Good morning, my property," he says cheerfully, because some people are naturally gifted at making slavery sound like a career opportunity. "Today we begin your education in agricultural excellence. The barley fields need attention, the irrigation channels require maintenance, and my livestock have developed opinions about their living conditions that need to be corrected." You follow him into fields that stretch toward the horizon like a textbook example of human misery disguised as productive agriculture. The barley grows in neat rows that represent months of back-breaking labor, careful irrigation management, and the kind of attention to detail that makes ancient farming simultaneously impressive and This is your life now, tending crops that you'll never eat, maintaining systems that benefit everyone except you. and developing the kind of intimate relationship with soil that usually requires death and burial. The work begins immediately because rest is for people who own their own time. You spend the morning learning to operate an irrigation system that represents thousands of years of hydraulic engineering innovation deployed in service of making your existence as uncomfortable as possible. The channels that carry water from the Euphrates to the fields require constant maintenance, periodic clearing, and the kind of physical labor that ancient Mesopotamians considered character building and modern people would classify as human. Rights violations. The sun climbs higher, and you discover that agricultural work in Bronze Age Mesopotamia comes with environmental challenges that make modern occupational safety standards look like science fiction. The heat reflects off the irrigation channels with intensity that could bake pottery. The mud clings to everything with the persistence of legal documentation, and the flies seem to have developed a personal interest in making your suffering more comprehensive. By midday, you're covered in mud, sweat, and the growing realization that 25 months of this might actually kill you before you can complete your debt obligation. This raises an interesting legal question. If you die during bonded service, does your family inherit the remaining debt? The Code of Hammurabi is remarkably detailed about property transfer, inheritance rights, and debt obligations, but somewhat vague about what happens when human collateral expires due to occupational hazards. That's when you meet your fellow slaves. Turns out, you're not the only person whose life has been systematically destroyed by Mesopotamian jurisprudence. The fields are worked by a diverse collection of bonded laborers, debt slaves, and people whose crimes against punctuality have earned them extended sentences in agricultural purgatory. There's Enlil-Nasar, who borrowed grain and returned it a day late due to a family illness. There's Naram-Sin, a different Naram-Sin from the merchant you might have been, who was caught selling beer that was allegedly watered down beyond legal limits. And there's Yornamu, who looked at a nobleman wrong during a religious festival and discovered that inappropriate eye contact constitutes assault under certain interpretations of the law. These are your new colleagues in suffering, and they're eager to share their expertise in surviving the intersection of ancient agriculture and legalized brutality. The educational program begins immediately. Rule 1 explains Enlil-Nasar while demonstrating proper technique for clearing irrigation. Channels never question anything. Questions imply that you think the system is unreasonable, which constitutes insubordination, which extends your service period. Rule 2 adds Naram-Sin while showing you how to harvest barley without damaging the crop. Never get sick. Illness reduces productivity, which means you're not fulfilling your labor obligations, which constitutes breach of contract, which extends your service period. Rule 3 concludes Yornamu while teaching you to repair agricultural tools with materials that were probably considered inadequate when they were new. Never have an accident. Injuries cost money to treat and reduce your work capacity, which means additional fees, which extends your service period. The pattern becomes clear. Everything extends your service period. Mesopotamian debt slavery operates on the principle that any deviation from perfect compliance with impossible standards justifies additional punishment. It's a legal system designed by people who viewed human suffering as a renewable resource that could be harvested indefinitely with proper management techniques. The work continues through the afternoon, and you learn that ancient agriculture involves considerably more than planting seeds and waiting for divine intervention. The barley requires constant attention, watering, weeding, protection from birds, protection from insects, protection from neighbors' livestock, and protection from weather conditions that range from uncomfortably hot to potentially fatal. Every plant represents a small investment in future suffering, and your job is to maximize that investment through careful application of misery. As evening approaches, you're granted a brief respite for the evening meal, which consists of barley, bread, water, and whatever vegetables could be grown without interfering with the primary crops. It's nutritionally adequate in the sense that it will probably prevent immediate death from starvation, but culinarily challenging in ways that make you appreciate the concept of flavor as a luxury you used to take for granted. You're sitting with your fellow slaves, sharing bread and existential despair, when one of Madhu Kabita Hishu's free laborers approaches with news that makes your situation infinitely more complicated. There's been an incident, he announces with the gravity of someone delivering divine judgment. Your former neighbor, Shamash Rabi, claims that you sold him defective pottery before your enslavement. A jar you made last month has cracked, and the grain stored inside has been ruined by moisture. Defective pottery. You remember the jarrah, perfectly good vessel that met all standard specifications for grain storage. But pottery, like human life in ancient Mesopotamia, comes with no guarantees except the certainty that someone will eventually find a reason to complain about it. Shamash Rabi is demanding compensation. The laborer continues. 30 measures of grain plus replacement value for the jar, plus fees for the inconvenience of having to seek legal remedy. This is where things get truly creative, in that specifically Mesopotamian way that transforms minor setbacks into life-ending catastrophes. Because you're currently enslaved, you have no assets, no income, and no legal standing to contest the claim. But you're still legally responsible for debts incurred before your enslavement, which means your existing obligations can accumulate additional obligations. While you're physically unable to address any obligations, Madhu Kabita appears as if summoned by the prospect of additional legal complications. He's accompanied by the same scribe who documented your original donkey disaster, along with Shamash Rabi himself, man whose facial expression suggests that he's been practicing his aggrieved victim routine for this exact moment. The matter is simple, Shamash Rabi declares with the confidence of someone who knows the legal system will support his position regardless of actual facts. The pottery was defective, the grain was ruined, and compensation is owed according to Law 235, which states that if a builder of a ship does his work badly, and the ship goes to pieces in the same year, he shall rebuild the ship at his own cost. Law 235 technically applies to shipbuilding, but Mesopotamian legal interpretation operates on the principle that any law can be adapted to any situation with sufficient creativity and malicious intent. If shoddy shipbuilding creates liability, then obviously defective pottery creates similar liability. The logic is ironclad, assuming you ignore the complete absence of actual logic. The debtor, announces the scribe after consulting his records, is currently in bonded service for previous obligations. Additional debts incurred during the service period extend the service term according to standard calculations. More calculations, more extensions, more time added to your sentence for crimes you committed while enslaved, for crimes you committed while trying to make an honest living. This is the legal equivalent of compound interest applied to human suffering. How much additional time, you ask, because you need to understand the full scope of your expanding disaster. The scribe performs mathematical operations that involve clay tablets, counting stones, and the kind of bureaucratic precision that makes ancient accounting procedures look like primitive torture techniques. 30 measures of grain at current market rates, plus jar replacement, plus legal fees, equals approximately 15 silver shekels. At standard debt service rates, this extends the bonded period by 7 months. 7 additional months. Your 25-month sentence has become 32 months because a pottery jar developed a crack and someone decided that was your fault. This is efficiency in legal punishment that makes modern justice systems look almost reasonable by comparison. But wait, there's more. Shamashrabi produces another clay tablet, this one covered with legal text that appears to have been prepared in advance. I've also discovered that the original pottery purchase violated market regulations. The transaction occurred during the afternoon heat, when clay products are subject to thermal stress that affects structural integrity. Law 108 requires that pottery sales be conducted during morning hours to ensure proper inspection conditions. Law 108 actually deals with tavern keepers who charge incorrect prices for beer. But apparently legal precedent in ancient Mesopotamia operates on the principle that any law can be applied to any situation. If you squint hard enough and ignore inconvenient details like factual accuracy. This constitutes fraudulent sales practices. The scribe notes, while adding more text to your ever-expanding legal file. Additional penalties apply for violations of commercial regulations. More penalties, more time, more months added to your sentence for infractions you didn't know were infractions involving laws that don't actually apply to your situation. Your debt slavery is becoming a generational commitment that might outlast your natural lifespan. However, Mardukabitaishu interjects with the generosity of someone about to offer you a choice between different forms of suffering. The law provides alternatives. The debtor may choose trial by ordeal to prove innocence of fraudulent intent. Trial by ordeal. The ancient Mesopotamian legal system's answer to situations where evidence and logic fail to produce sufficiently dramatic results. Trial by ordeal operates on the principle that divine intervention will protect the innocent and punish the guilty through carefully designed tests that mostly just punish everyone equally. What does trial by ordeal involve? You ask because you need to understand your options for potentially making everything worse. The river test explains the scribe with professional enthusiasm. The accused is bound and thrown into the Euphrates. If the river god accepts the offering and the accused drowns, guilt is confirmed and all debts are considered paid through divine judgment. If the river god rejects the offering and the accused survives, innocence is proven and all charges are dismissed. The river test. Your choices are definitely remain enslaved for 32 months, or possibly drown while trying to prove your innocence to a river that has never shown particular interest in human justice. These are your alternatives: guaranteed suffering or probable death with a small chance of vindication. The evening crowd has gathered again, because nothing draws ancient Mesopotamians like the prospect of watching someone make life or death decisions under legal pressure. Your family has arrived, your neighbors are present, and even some strangers have wandered over to witness. Whatever entertainment your suffering might provide, your spouse approaches with the kind of expression that suggests this conversation has been anticipated but never adequately prepared for. The children are asking if you're coming home tonight. I'm not coming home, you explain, because honesty seems important when your life is disintegrating in public. I'm either staying enslaved for 32 months or attempting to prove my innocence by surviving underwater breathing exercises administered by a river god. Your eldest son, the one you sacrificed your freedom to protect, looks at you with the kind of disappointment that cuts deeper than any legal punishment. Can't you just pay the money? I don't have any money, you remind him. I'm enslaved specifically because I don't have money. The slavery was supposed to earn money to pay debts, but the debts keep increasing faster than the slavery can pay them off. This is the fundamental mathematics of Mesopotamian debt slavery. The system is designed to generate obligations faster than labor can satisfy them. It's a perpetual motion machine of legal suffering that converts human effort into extended sentences with remarkable efficiency. Mada Kabita Heishu steps forward with the authority of someone who owns your labor and most of your remaining lifespan. The choice must be made immediately. Extended bonded service or trial by ordeal. The law does not permit extended deliberation. On matters involving divine judgment, you look at the Euphrates, flowing peacefully in the distance, like a river that has never been asked to serve as judge, jury, and executioner in legal proceedings. The water looks calm, inviting even, until you remember that you'll be experiencing it while tied up and relying on divine intervention for survival. You look at your family, who will spend the next 32 months wondering if you're still alive while trying to survive without your income, your labor, or your presence. Your children will grow up with a father who exists primarily as a legal obligation working someone else's fields. You look at the crowd of neighbors who will go home tonight to tell stories about your legal catastrophe, using your suffering as entertainment and your choices as examples of what happens when people fail to navigate the complexities of Mesopotamian jurisprudence with sufficient skill. I choose trial by ordeal, you announce, because drowning might be preferable to 32 months of slavery. And there's always the possibility that the river god has a sense of humor about property disputes. The crowd murmurs with approval. This is better entertainment than they'd hoped for. A simple debt slavery would have been interesting, but trial by ordeal promises genuine drama with actual life or death stakes. The scribe begins documenting your choice with the careful attention to detail that will ensure future archaeologists have complete records of your legally mandated attempted drowning. Let it be recorded that the accused has chosen trial by river ordeal to determine guilt or innocence in matters of fraudulent pottery sales and violation of commercial regulations. Marduk Abitaheshu produces rope with the efficiency of someone who has prepared for this possibility. The trial will be conducted at dawn tomorrow, allowing time for proper ritual preparation and divine consultation. One more night, one final evening to contemplate the series of decisions that transformed you from successful potter to defendant in a trial where the judge is a river, and the jury consists of whatever deities happen to be paying attention to human legal proceedings. As you're led back to your slave quarters to await tomorrow's attempted drowning, you can't help but reflect on the remarkable efficiency of the Mesopotamian legal system. In less than 2 days, you've progressed from respectable merchant to enslaved laborer to defendant in a trial by ordeal. This is judicial efficiency that makes modern court systems look sluggish by comparison. Your last evening as a person whose survival depends on legal technicalities rather than swimming ability is spent in contemplation of the cosmic irony that has brought you to this point. You borrowed a donkey. You returned it late. Now you're preparing to prove your innocence by seeing whether a river god thinks you deserve to live. This is ancient Mesopotamia, where justice is swift, punishment is creative, and human dignity is apparently a concept that won't be invented for several thousand years. Dawn is coming, and with it, your appointment with divine judgment, administered through trial by drowning, sweet dreams. If you can manage them while contemplating underwater. Legal proceedings, tomorrow. You discover whether the river god has a more merciful approach to contract disputes than human civilization. Spoiler alert, probably not. Like and subscribe. If you've never been legally required to prove your innocence through divine intervention involving potential drowning, thank you for joining us on this educational journey through why ancient Mesopotamia was simultaneously the cradle of civilization and the worst possible place to live. Remember, always return borrowed donkeys on time. Never trust ancient legal systems, and be grateful you live in an era where punctuality issues are resolved through late fees rather than trial by ordeal. Sweet dreams, and may you never wake up in ancient Mesopotamia.